Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours, where we answer your questions 7 days a week. Alexander Knight's our reader for the day. Alex, what's our first question?
First question is coming from the QR code this morning from Max Schiffman in San Diego. I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around how to properly patch audio between vMix and Dante Virtual Soundcard and a Yamaha DM3, but I'm confused about how the DVS channels relate to inputs and outputs in vMix.
Alexander, what do you think?
I'm not a vMix user. I'm sure somebody else can comment on that. But yeah, the main thing to wrap your head around with DVS is if you've never used it before, you kind of have to get used to the way it works because it is basically a matrix. So if you look at it, and I'll see if I can pull it up here. So you can see I have Dante Virtual Soundcard. So if you just collapse these columns here, so you got vertical and horizontal columns here. So you got your receivers down the left. So these are things receiving audio, and then you have your transmitters that are sending audio, right? So there's basically, and if you just expand all these, this gives you a good overview, and I'll make this full screen here so you can see this. So you can see this crossbar here. So it's easy to make mistakes when patching, but generally, like for example, like with me, I'll give you an example because I have a DM3, and one of the annoying things is you kind of have to tilt your head to the side to actually look. So you can see your DM3 right here. So this is what I have here, sending audio. And one thing I find with DVS is get in the habit of creating labels for all your patches for both inputs and outputs, and actually write a document. Like I've got a document on my computer that says what every patch does, where it's going, what the purpose is. But in DVS, you can actually rename these. These will all be blank by default. So for example, like I've got an aux bus on my DM3 that is sending audio to Zoom, and that aux bus is called Zoom. So that's my mix minus, right? And so if I go down here, I can go to one of my Mac Minis. I think it's this one here. So you can see I'm sending audio into the Mac Mini here on IMP channels 1 and 2. And those are right there. And you can see there are the labels for my Mac Mini M2, those channels 01, channel 02. So that's a stereo input. And that is what is going into my Zoom client on this Mac, which is what you're hearing me on right now. So with vMix, obviously with vMix, your patch, I'm guessing vMix must have some kind of its own virtual sound card. I'm not entirely certain, but it would show, if it did, it would show up in DVS, and then you would just have to figure out where you're routing things to, and maybe perhaps somebody else can comment on vMix specifically.
Mr. Lindsay, good morning to you, sir. What do you think?
And Mickey, I think Alex's explanation was great. Mickey said, reach out to him in Discord, and I would take him up on that. you can get Mickey to walk you through it. It'd be great. But I think Alex showed you a lot about the Dante routing as it that affects both Mac and PC.
Next question.
Vic Hernandez in Springfield, Missouri, USA. I'm volunteering to do a voiceover for WNYC. Are there any free or low-cost solutions to record myself so I can hear what I sound like? Space is acoustically treated. I have a MV7 connected to USB to a Windows 11 machine.
Alexander.
Yes, there are free solutions. The first one that comes to mind, if you're on a Mac computer, would be GarageBand. And there is also Audacity, which is kind of an ugly looking application, but it's a free application that's very, very popular. And look, hey, it's free. You can't complain about the cost of zero. And that would allow you to record yourself. It does have some decently powerful tools in there for editing. They have improved it over time. I think they even added a way of doing loudness normalization. So that is another option for you.
Courtney, can you help us out from the Windows side?
Yeah, I'm going to second Audacity because it is multi-cross platform. It works on Linux, Mac OS, and Windows 11. Here's the interface. So yeah, it's kind of ugly, but it gets the job done. It's open source. It accepts plugins. It has all the types of controls. You can bring up any of your audio devices on it. And it will record multiple channels at one time and play back multiple channels, etc. But as far as simply recording your microphone and playing it back, it's a simple install, simple to use. Just hit record and set your inputs, set your input devices and your output devices. Once you set those two things, just hit the record button and it starts recording stereo, and then you can play it back.
And the other thing that I'll mention about Audacity, it is a little clunky when you're in there, but if I know people who are really good at it, and they do amazing things with it. It's just they have to have the time to go ahead and do it. And Mickey mentioned in the chat that you can open up the Motive Mix app, install that on your Windows machine, and then you'll have control of the microphone settings and the ability to listen to side tone. I do, however, encourage you to go ahead and record that and listen back, because the sound that you're hearing when you're speaking through the side tone is going to be different than if you're silent and just critically listening to it. I know whenever I'm trying new audio settings or a new microphone, what I'll usually do on the Mac is I open up QuickTime and I'll do audio recordings with different levels of noise assist versus different microphones versus trying to get my gain staging just right. And I want to make sure it sounds the best for me and the best for my room. So exciting project. Good luck, Vic. Next question.
This one's coming from Mike Edwards in Brooklyn, New York. Morning, everyone. What color would the panel recommend painting a production control room, and why?
Courtney.
18% gray, right, Alex? Yeah, I would not go with a color. I would go with a darker color than a lighter color, because a lot of times you want the control room to be muted in color so that you don't want colored light or any kind of light washing out screens or getting in your eyes. You want your eyes to acclimate to a darker room. So I wouldn't paint it a bright color, and I would paint it a neutral color, either, gray or, off-white, white or gray or black, anything
Alex?
monochrome area.
Yeah, I painted a lot of production control rooms, and they're all 18% gray. So and here's the thing: it doesn't have to be 18% gray. A darker gray makes a difference. The main thing is that it's easy for me to take a gray slate that I get. It's just like I can just hand it to somebody. I hand it to whoever's going to paint it. Just match that color. I just need you to match the color. It's just a shorthand for me not having to figure it out. So there's nothing magical about 18% gray other than there's a lot of samples of it laying around that you can hand to somebody, and it works great.
Ronnie?
Yeah, there are two ways to do this. Either you go with the local shop's color mixer, but make sure they are mixing a color that doesn't include too much bluish or reddish hue in it. And to be sure, you can just purchase something that are already neutral. This is a popular one, and there are numerous other brands as well that are selling these colors, but make sure it's gray and not too dark.
And remember, what you're achieving with that neutral color is that you're making sure that your eyes are staying grounded. Your eyes have the amazing ability to adapt to minor changes in white balance. So if you're in a brightly colored room, your eyes are going to get used to that, and that's going to skew your internal perception of white point away from whatever neutral is. So when you're trying to make a judgment on color or see does something feel right or not, and you're not in a neutral environment from which to judge, that can get you in trouble. So remember, what we're always trying to do is we're trying to keep it, besides keeping us calm, we're trying to keep our white point centered. And dark is nice because if you don't have extra bright screens look brighter. Your questions and votes drive our show. So remember, you can not only ask questions, but also chat and vote on the questions in Makana. If you don't have access to Makana, you can sign up at officehours.global/join. And if you go to officehours.global/join, you'll get links on how to get into Makana, Discord, more. Just have to put in your name, put in your email, and you'll see it in your inbox the very next day. Next question.
This question is coming in from Scott Tupper in Livermore, California, USA. Came across IPMX, and it looks promising in the world of AVoIP. Any thoughts on when and where it will be used?
Courtney?
Well, nowhere at first, and then maybe a few places. The problem with the new protocol is it takes forever to get people to adopt it. And also, it can be a problem if there's only one manufacturer behind it. This one is supported by a number of different organizations. Here, we can look at the lineup down here: EBU, European Broadcast Union, SMPTE, American Stand, the kind of AV standard for America, AIMS, MIWA VSF. And it is an open source standard, so hopefully there will not be any licensing fees for it. That's one thing that could kill it right offhand. But as we know, as it's, as 2111 has been slow to roll out, it takes a long time to establish a standard and to get manufacturers to adopt it because there can be little tweaks. I had a huge problem when they tried to do IXML in audio in the broadcast wave files. And because it was that MXL part means extensible language, which means that anybody can create a schema that suits their own products, which then says, hey, it's no longer a standard. Then so if you make a piece of software that's supposed to use that new standard, let me put it in quotes, then you have to parse that standard to read it. And then you got to read, okay, this is the schema for this manufacturer. This is the schema for this manufacturer. This is the schema for that manufacturer. So to parse a file format or a stream format to accommodate all the different variations of it, it's very problematic. It's very intensive and it takes a long time. And that's why I think it's going to be a little slow to roll out.
Alex?
Yeah, the problem, as Courtney has outlined very effectively, the problem really is that it takes, you have to get everybody to, it's like herding cats. You have to get all these folks to agree on everything. They're going to put it in, they're going to support it. And the market has changed. This kind of thing was something 10 years ago or 20 years ago. You'd roll this out slowly. The big players would go along with it, and then it would slowly become a standard. The problem you have now is that Blackmagic will move faster than they do. NDI is moving faster than they do. Dante AV is moving faster than they are. And so the problem is you've got a bunch of other folks that are solving the problem today, and they're not worried about trying to figure out how to build this. It may be a better system. It doesn't matter if it can't get out fast enough. And so, and the market is, the large market of heavy iron is, probably, it has a place, but that place keeps on getting smaller. And so it's really hard to, I think that, I don't think it's going to go anywhere. I think it's cool. And I think that it could be better, but I don't think it's going to survive.
This is one of my favorite comics of all time, is this XKCD about how standards proliferate. And it's like, C, AC chargers, character encodings, instant messaging. Situation, there are 14 competing standards. 14, ridiculous. We need to develop one universal standard that covers everyone's use cases. Yeah. Soon. Situation, there are 15 competing standards.
Exactly.
Love it. Head tip XKCD. Next question.
This one's from Bal Vahus in Austin, Texas. For a multicam shoot with mixed brands, Sony, Blackmagic, Panny, what's your workflow for a neutralizing transform? How do you create a LUT to get all cameras to a common color, accurate baseline before the creative grade?
Ronnie?
Yeah, there are different ways to do this. The easy way is to use a tool like LUTCalc, which I've been using for a few years or decades. It actually just simulate the things that you would do if you do your manual measurements. And it's not entirely correct all the time, and it has a limited number of cameras and models. But you can get a kind of normalized picture. The thing is that I would never recommend you do that. So preventing using different type of brands, because you can almost never have a complete, entire, perfect match between different producers. There are too many things inside the camera that are different, and each of them have their own color science, and it's really difficult to match up a camera. And the way you do it, if you don't have a camera with built-in LUT conversion or the ability to load LUTs, you can use something like a Blackmagic mini converter or microconverter. 3G and up, I think, is supporting loading of LUTs. I think that's the 7x7 LUTs. I don't think it supports the 33 dot LUTs, but this is the way you can do it. And the other way will probably Alex talk us through.
Alex?
Yeah, so there's a couple things. I agree with Ronnie. I avoid mixing and matching brands. I don't even like mixing and matching camera types. So like for instance, just getting from an FR7 to an FX6, those sensors should be the same, and they are not. And so there's fine details that are different, and every time you change cameras, you're changing the color science and how they get from one place to another, and it is very complex to get that done. And it never even like take a look. If you watch The Matrix, and my favorite scene, of course, is the dojo scene, and you watch the changes in the values of the camera between most of the shots and the slow motion shots, grain, color, everything changes slightly when you make those changes, and that's when they had a lot of money to do this. So you don't want to go down that path if you don't have to. So number one is try to stick with those brands. If you can't do that, what you want to do is try, and Mickey points out every family of lenses has different color properties as well. When we do color matching, we make sure that we define what lens is on what camera. Like it's not like, oh, we got these all working and now they all work with any lenses. The lenses all have, not only do different family of lenses have different color properties, two lenses made by the same company that are exactly the same will look different. Like they are slightly different than the other one. It's just the nature of things. And so, the Fujinon lenses, for instance, on the F950, ILM went through many to get the ones that all look the same. Like they tested many of them. So if you can't do that, then if you can't, you're going to have to use multiple different types of cameras. Try to group them into things that don't interact with each other. So don't just willy-nilly mix them up. You don't want two close-ups, for instance, that are different brands if you don't have to. So if you're talking two faces, what we really key off on, by the way, is people's skin color. So you want to be you want to make sure that those are lined up to make that actually work. And so that's the in between is group cameras so that you don't ever see that they're not matching up. So you have some that are on the outside, some that are doing cutaways, some that are doing close-ups on the hand, some that are doing whatever it is. Don't have them all. Don't do things that people can naturally see the difference between the two. The next thing, of course, is to you can try to color grade them. You won't be able to. Like you won't be able to color grade them to that, and you have to decide whether if this is for a record, then shoot everything as close to log as you can with as much data as you can, so that you can correct it later. So that's your next throw down that path. If you have to do it live, then that's when we start using either on the high end, the AJA LUT box is probably the best thing to put next to cameras to do that, but it's $2,000 for much less. $75 or whatever it is. You can get a lot of the Blackmagic ones, as Ronnie said, a lot of the converter boxes have a LUT built into them, and you can put it's a 17-point typically in there. It's not going to be perfect, but it's going to get you a long way. Now, to do that LUT, what you need to do is you need a chart. It doesn't have to be the DeMont chart that I'm talking about. You just need a color chart that's going to be there. And what you need to do is you get one camera where you want it, and then you shoot the chart with that camera. Then you shoot it with each other camera framed up as close to the same as possible. Then you take it into something like Resolve. Well, I take it into Resolve. You put them over top of each other, and you adjust the top one in the color page until you set the top layer as difference, and you then color correct it until it turns black, because black means there's no difference between the two. And so you do all that color correction, and then you save that out as a LUT. You right click on the file, the image that's in the color page of that top camera, and you save. One of your options will be to export a LUT, and so then you export that LUT. You load it into your camera or your box, and if you do that carefully, now a couple things. If you're going to do this, controlled environment. You can't do this outside. You can't do it. It's like nothing can change. So it's a controlled environment, and you get these all lined up. And a lot of times we'll do them the day before. It's time consuming. It's not something you just kind of go and just make it all work. But that's what I would recommend to get much, much closer to that process.
We've got evening shows for you to watch if you're looking for some office hours in the evening. We've got extra hours on Monday nights, and the rundowns are on Thursday. Check out our YouTube page and join us. Next question.
Andy Kokendorfer in Vieira, Florida is asking, can you use a Mixpre 3.2 as a USB mic and computer speaker interface for Zoom somehow?
Ronnie?
Yeah, on my machine, I just plug in the USB interface from the Mixpre. I have the 6 model, but shouldn't be any difference. And it just appears like any other sound cards. And you just have to make sure that you have the mixes set correctly inside the Mixpre. It can be a little bit daunting if this is the first time you've done it, but we have a lot of people here in office hours that has used this as a sound card for a long time. So the people would probably be able to help you and get the right settings.
Courtney?
Yep, as Ronnie said, in fact, a lot of people here are probably using it right now. It is class compliant on a USB connectivity. Routing can be a little bit daunting, as Ronnie was saying, because you have to go into submenus and menus, and there's in the Mixpre 3.2, there's a basic setup for your menus, and then there's the advanced setup for your menus. And the basic setup for your menus may not offer you the more complex routing and monitoring that you may want to get into. And if you're just using 2 channels in, stereo in, stereo out, it's pretty simple and pretty basic. If you want to use multi-channel out, if you want to monitor multi-channels coming in and out of your computer, you may have to load ASIO drivers if you're on Windows. Of course, Mac, the drivers support multi-channel directly. So talk to Mickey, and he can help you configure it for how you want it. Let Zoom do your management of echo cancellation for you. You just have to get it so the input doesn't feed back to the output, and route the correct things to the output so that Zoom can see them. Alex?
Yeah, and I use it right now. I'm using it right now. and so when you're talking about a speaker interface, I don't know if a Mixpre 3 is really the right thing to connect to a speaker. There's a little headphone or line out. I wouldn't use it for that, but I do use it for my headphones. And what I do is I'm sending my computer audio back through the Mixpre through the USB, and then I send it to a channel. So in this case, my mic comes in on channel 3, but what I'm getting from the computer is on channel 1, which is nice because I can now attenuate the levels of the Zoom, of everyone talking here as it relates to mine. So I can get my mic where I need it. I then turn the headset up to where I'm happy, and then turn the return back until it's just right. And I definitely would not ever, for so many reasons, never ever, unless you absolutely have to, use a speaker when you're using Zoom. And the reason for that is not, I can hear it. What's funny is that every time I talk to people who don't have headphones on, I can't figure out what's happening because there's no full duplex after that. So Zoom starts to do echo cancellation. It does echo cancellation really well, but you end up with this, sorry, because what's happening is that as you talk, it's cutting the other person off. And when everybody has headphones, it doesn't do that. Like it just lets you hear them, they hear you. It's a much more natural experience to have it. So I will almost never be on Zoom or Meet or Teams or whatever it is without having headphones in. And if everybody does that, you end up with a much, much better conversation for your stream, for yourself. It's all much better. And that's been the case for the last 15 years in video conferencing.
I'm in the same boat with using the Mixpre as the audio interface for this show. One thing that really improved my life was when I found the routing has been spoken about in the previous answers, where I only have my microphone routed to the USB output. So no matter what I'm hearing in my ears, the only thing the computer will ever hear is this microphone. It's locked down to that. The other thing that I did was plugged in a USB MIDI controller. I've used the Nano Control and the Nano Studio from Korg, and now I have little sliders. So if all of a sudden someone comes into a meeting and they're really, really hot, and I need to go and grab just the Zoom audio that's in my ears and turn that down without affecting me, I don't even have to look. And it's very nice. The one thing that can trip you up that you have to be careful about is your channel configuration. And that's where, if you're on a Mac, you would go to your audio mini setup and make sure that the channels that the Mac is listening to are the right ones, and also your sample rate. Sometimes it hasn't happened to me recently, but when I first got it, I'd always wanted to go back to 44.1. Alex?
Yeah, and I will say that all this routing, I mean, almost every interface will have some way for you to do this. Mickey points this out in the chat. The reason that we use Mixpres is because of noise assist. Like that's the reason that most of us who use Mixpres that don't feel like we could use anything else, is because the noise assist is the most, in my opinion, the most transparent and just the most transparent that you can get in a way that interfaces with all different video conferencing. So Zoom's personalized noise reduction is incredible. But if I have to join a meeting, half of my meetings are in Teams, which I hate with a passion, just in case you're wondering. There's such a great one of those AI movies where the Teams guy is talking to somebody and goes, I do what everybody else does, but not as good, but not really. But anyway, Teams is such a piece of trash. So anyway, but half of my meetings are in Teams, and so the problem is the reason I don't depend on Zooms to do this is that I need a hardware interface, and that's why I use a hardware switcher, is so that I don't have to think, like I'm taking control of this, so that no matter what I join on the other side, it just works, and that's the thing so you need it. That's why I need it in the hardware. And if I'm going to do it in the hardware, I don't have any other piece of hardware that does noise reduction as well as the Mixpre 3.
Next question.
Paul Vahus in Austin, Texas. What are the practical limitations and pitfalls of using a mirrorless camera's HDMI log output directly into a live switcher like an ATEM Mini? How long does this compare to using a camera, or how does this compare to using a camera with a more robust SDI output?
Alexander?
I'm not sure why you want to do that, because normally first of all, if you're going to connect a mirrorless camera and output log, it's going to look bad if you're putting it into a live switcher. I don't understand why you'd want to do that. Normally, log is used as a profile for recording to get the most dynamic range during the capture portion so that your colorist can properly grade the footage. In a live setting, you can't really color grade. You can shade a Blackmagic camera, specifically certain Blackmagic cameras, but normally you wouldn't be going through like a color grading process in log live in a camera switcher in a live environment. Maybe I'm missing something, so I'll let somebody else chime in.
Courtney?
Yeah, I would stay away from using HDMI log. I'd set it to Rec 709 probably. Problem with the log is unless you've applied a lot to it before it goes out of the camera, it's going to be hard to color correct once it gets into the ATEM Mini. So if you're bringing it into an ATEM, it only supports 1080p and ATEM Mini, the Mini line. Only 1080p, and you don't have, a lot of control over color correction once it gets into the mixer. So unless you run it through an outside type of color correction device or lookup table. So I would stick with Rec 709 to avoid the color issues, because C-Log and M-Log looks awful when you put it into a switcher or monitor. It's flat and green.
Alex?
Yeah, one of the things that we've done in that respect, if we want to do log to a switcher, it usually means we're trying to go to something like PQ for a stream to YouTube or to Akamai or something else. And so one of the easier ways to do this, if you don't have the HDR controls that you want, is to just go log in and then do the correction to the whole show. It's very difficult to match the cameras in that environment. so it is, because you don't have a LUT anymore. Like you're just flying along, and so you really have to nail everything to make that actually work. And so it often doesn't work as well. There is 10-bit going through that. The other thing you remember is that there is a 10-bit processor in the Mini Extreme, I believe, or the Mini. At least the Mini Extreme, and you have to use the HDMI out if you're going to do that. You can't do anything else if you're going to try to capture that. But I would, again, it's very, very, with a mirrorless camera, it's very, very difficult if you're going to do log with multiple cameras. You're gonna have to take it into something like Resolve, let it dice the entire edit, grab all the cameras from one, grab all the cameras from the other, group them all together, and do all the color correction. It's not a minor minor problem, I would solve this ahead of time, or I'd record to the camera if I was doing that. But the only real reason you would do this with one with a little camera like a Z10 is because you wanted to record, and I would just record the camera's output from there and convert it for the live show.
Courtney.
Yeah, I was going to say one point back to you because you were showing us log C, CJ, during Alex's answer there. So we cut to CJ, we can see what it looks like.
Yes, this is when we say it's going to look not great. It's a little milky, it's a little muted, it's a little gray. But when your LUT is on, you look better. Next question.
This one's coming from Ryan Thomason in Houston, Texas. What are people's thoughts on the agreement between SAG and AFTRA and the video game group? Was it really a win for the voice actors?
Courtney.
Well, I think it was. It was a 15.7% bump in compensation, plus additional 3% per year for the next 3 years. And most union contracts have that 3% bump on an annual basis, and most of them are for a 3-year period. So I think it did pretty well. The AI, the residuals bump was like a 0.5%, so not a big deal there. As a member, I did vote on it. So I think the AI provisions just mandate consent and disclosure. And it prevents them from using AI replications of your voice during any kind of strike. So that might be a good prevention. So if you are going on strike in the future, that'll prevent them from just using your old recordings and running it through the magic of AI and eliminating you during the strike.
Alex?
The real challenge is, and there's other lawsuits that are kind of trying to manage this, but I think that the future of a lot of this may end up not being using voice actors at all. If you make it too hard for them to replicate or whatever, and they're kind of rocking a hard place is the problem here, is because if you make it too difficult to do, they're gonna get to a point where they just want to use AI voices for this. Especially, this is much easier to do than dealing directly with actors and so on and so forth, because that's going to be harder to replicate. The voices, I think what you're going to end up seeing is your hero voices are all going to be still the actors that they promote and talk about and everything else, but most of the ancillary voices will be AI within the next two years. Like it's going to happen really fast. That most of the stuff that doesn't matter, the what we would think of as like the NPCs, non-player characters, they're all going to be AI. I think in the next couple years.
Courtney?
Yeah, you got to remember that the value of a voice actor of a celebrity is in the marketing of the name. Not necessarily in the performance of the voice. They could probably come up with a ersatz Tom Hanks pretty easy. And you can't advertise starring a sound-alike of Tom Hanks. It just doesn't have the same click. So you're using the name of the celebrity as a means of marketing an animated movie. That's mainly why they're hired these days.
I think this is for the video game agreement, though. So I think for video games,
video games as well. Yeah,
it is. I don't
in the video game.
I don't know how many people know who's voicing their video games. Like I don't know if it's the same level of recognition that you have with, animations. Is that I don't, and I could be wrong. I'm not in that culture enough to know, but I just don't know how many people really. There's a handful of them. There's the Mark Hamills, and there's a handful, but I can only think of a handful off the top of my head that are like, these are game voiceovers. Everything else is the voices that happen when you're playing the game, and I don't know if I tie them directly in the same way that the marketing machine around film is much different than the gaming one. And so I think it'll be interesting to see how this works.
I just love when the voice actors really nail it in a video game. They'll, all of a sudden people will seek them out. Like you'll see this when the Grand Theft Auto 5 came out of 10 or so years ago. All of a sudden, there's all this YouTube content that was like trying to, find these guys, and they wanted to see who was playing the different characters. And, a great performance is still going to garner that attention. But the question is, that's important, like Alex said, for your tentpole main characters. But as soon as you go a little bit off that main focus, it's a lot less work. You can ask questions 24/7 at askofficehours.global. It's askofficehours.global. There's fast and easy, nothing to sign up for or log into. Just go to askofficehours.global, throw in your name, throw in your question, and we'll work it in over the next few shows. Next question.
This one's coming from Douglas Carmichael. When I experimented with linking my Allen & Heath SQ5 and Yamaha DM3 via Dante, I found that the connection would only be stable if I increased the latency to 500 U seconds. Why could that be?
Ronnie?
Yeah, that's microseconds, which is really, really, really short frame in the timeline. I think the reason is the DM3 is using a little bit less capable chipset for the Dante. I think they are using either the Broadway or maybe another of the smaller ones, whereas the SQ series, at least if you're using the newer hardware, are using a little bit more powerful Brooklyn, I think it's the Brooklyn 2 chipset, which is a little bit more potent according to number of channels and how fast it can operate. It could be other reasons as well. I would look into maybe trying to replace the switch and see if that has any issues. I also think the DM3 is limited to 100 megabit interface, whereas the SQ series can run up to 1 gigabit in speed. So check if that could be something that is causing this to happen.
Alexander?
Yeah, there's some unknowns here, Douglas. I don't know if you're in the chat. I just sent you a couple messages there, but we don't really know how you're connecting these two together. Are they going through a network switch? Are you connecting the secondary port of the Allen Heath and going directly into the primary port of the DM3? How exactly are you connecting it? So there may be, if you are going through a switch, it sounds like maybe there may be some network related problems that you're going to have to troubleshoot, whether or not things are on a VLAN. If they're not on a VLAN, make sure you have the right switch, and like a good quality enterprise grade switch. Make sure power management or power saving features are disabled. Make sure you consult the Audinate networking guides to make sure you've done some of the basic stuff there. Having Dante separated on its own VLAN isolated is always recommended. So if you have taken care of all those basics and you're still having trouble, you may want to come back and give us a little more information about your setup.
And Guy Cochran comes into the chat with the sage advice of, have you taken the Dante certification? If you haven't, the answer's within. Next question.
Paul Vahus, Austin, Texas. When lighting a green screen, what is the single most common mistake that compromises the final key? What is your recommended method for ensuring perfectly even illumination on the screen itself?
Courtney.
Well, I'll just touch on one thing rather than even illumination. I'll let the others handle their methodology. But one thing to remember, and this is kind of a common mistake, a lot of times if you're shooting on a green screen stage that may have a coved stage that's all painted green, only illuminate the area of the screen that you need behind the actors. And because once that green starts to wrap around your actors, it's going to be really hard to pull an edge off of the actors if they're getting a lot of green spill from the sides. So only eliminate and remember, you don't, if your actor is static and not running around on the screen and you're not panning them around, let's say you're just standing a stand up in front of a green screen, keep the green screen a distance from them. And so it'll be A, out of focus, and B, the light that you light that green screen with won't be wrapping around onto the actor. And only light up the portion of the green screen that you need, because you can use a garbage mat, even if it doesn't fill the screen. Remember, you can use a garbage mat to key out the areas of the screen that the person isn't occluding with their appendages. So make sure they keep their hands to themselves and only light the portion of the screen that you're going to see and need.
Ronnie.
Yeah, keep the correct distance from the background to the back of the motif that you are filming or keying. We just last year we did a kind of a small lab in our studio just to test how far we could have these qualities. And if we take a look at one of the behind the scenes shots, you can see the camera to the right, and you see a small, I think this is the Elgato pull-up green screen, which is not that super high quality. And we lit it with two of the, you can see one of the lights to the left and one to the right. Here's maybe a better picture. This is the Aperture P300Cs, which is, I can't remember the settings. I have it in the table somewhere. And what we did here was to try to get the ultimate keying quality, and we had some discussions with Alex Lindsay in the panel here to see how far we could get it. And these are the measurements. And the first question from Alex was, how did you do that? And that for me was kind of an experiment where you can see the numbers are from 76 to 74. So the top line here is the entire lit screen. And you can see there is a little red and a little blue, but this is generally a really, really good key, but it's really expensive. So the thing that you should be thinking of is having really flat, good, soft lights on the background, and try to avoid any hotspots, and have these numbers within their limits, and then you will have a pretty easy job doing the keying. And this experiment came as we had some footage we got from a client that was not really good, and we was having huge trouble keying it correctly. So playing with these settings and playing with the equipment you have, and try to get the entire green screen. This is a small green screen, by the way. Trying to get the green screen perfectly lit from the sides or from the top or from the bottom, and don't have that light spill onto your subject. That is hard, but with training you can achieve anything.
Alex?
Yeah, I think that the biggest thing that we find is that people don't end up with a flat surface. I mean, if you're I know that sounds like a thing, but if you don't start with a flat surface, things get really hard really fast. And so having a flat surface, that's the most common thing that we see. And when I say flat, I mean a non-wrinkled flat surface. The wrinkles are just the devil. And so you can use a steamer. Now the thing that I use Composite Components digital green for it's a Lycra that you can stretch into a frame, and I think Jonathan Erlin still makes it. Okay, they still make it. I think you can still order it from them. It is by far the best green screen that you can get. It's not close. It's not super expensive. It'll cost you $300 or $400 for a 9x8 or something like that, and it's not close. Like it's not like Roscoe, and it's definitely not like Westcott, and it's a different kind of green, and it's Lycra. And that means you can stretch it, spray some water on it, walk away, come back, and it's there. It's done. And so the digital green screen is the thing that I use, and I've been using it now for almost 30 years. To make this work. And I've tried other ones because I don't have the money to get another one or whatever, and I don't do that anymore. So that's the first thing that I would recommend. The second thing is that, again, separating as folks have said in the chat, the lighting for the background and the lighting for the subject should be in two different worlds. So you want to separate them out. Typically minimum of 4 or 5 feet, but the further away you can get, the better, so that you don't have any spill. The spill, what happens is the light coming from the green screen is coming at different angles. It's a big diffuse, coming off of it. As you move away, it's more and more the light that you see in the camera is just the stuff that's directly behind the person, and it's not lighting up everything around them. So you get less bloom that you're going to have to deal with later. But then once you've separated them, you want to get. I don't know how to light green screens without scopes. So I know some people do it. I don't know how to do that. So Ronnie showed you the scopes there. What I do is I usually cross the scopes and cross light. So I'm typically using long lights, and this is again for knee up. And the other thing that people make mistake of is they really want to do feet. They want to capture people's feet. Just know that if you go below someone's shins, you have now increased the complexity of your key by about 10x. So like just decide, do I really need that? And a lot of times we will shoot that, but we keep it really short because because now you're talking about contact shadows. You're talking about a surface that's going to be different than the background. You're talking about all of these other things that start to happen. It's way, 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 way harder. so just know that and this is to get great green screens. And great green screens, what's the difference between a good green screen and a great green screen? Hair. So little bits of hair that make it feel real is what you get when you can make that actually, that's when you know that someone's got a great green screen. And most people don't have great green screens. People are kind of used to looking at bad ones on YouTube and even broadcast, but that's how you can make that actually work. Then you sit on a scope, you try to get the scopes. You want the difference between your green record and your red and blue record to be 40 points on your scope. That's what you're trying to hit. And usually we set the green at about 70%. So we're looking at the red and green to be about 30%. If we're able to separate it and we're able to flag our lights off, a lot of this is going to be what we call green on green, which is very dangerous, but very powerful. So we use green lights on the green screen. And that means your red and green levels in the green screen are going to be at 10, or less. And your green is still going to be at 70. You can even bring the green down a little bit when you do that. And the reason you do that is because you don't want a lot of spill. You don't need to do that because you still have so much separation, and it's going to give you better edges. But the key is it has to be perfectly flat, like what Ronnie's showing there. That's what you're shooting for. Now, usually mine, I think maybe I have a wider shot or whatever. If you zoom in on somebody, you'll get what Ronnie's showing there. Usually you'll see a little bit of taper on the edges, and that's usually okay. Because really what you're doing, what most of us do is do some kind of garbage mat. And I do procedural garbage mats. I do a hard key, and then I expand it out so that it's out around the person, and I blow everything else away. And then so that there's a key that's moving with the person that is getting rid of most of the junk. And then there's another key, a core mat, that is getting rid of most of the stuff on the inside. You do the key and then pull it in. So then you're only dealing with, a very small area around the edges, and that's all you're keying, and that makes it a lot easier. But it still has to be very even from the top to the bottom. And it just depends also on how much keying you're doing. I'm speaking as someone who used to do 10 hours a week of keying that had to be every hair. And when you do that, you get really specific about how you light it, but it's not about the software. I can literally vibe code a little app that will key the kind of screens that I do, because all it is red plus blue. And then that sum is green is divided by red plus blue. And then you do an unspill, which is a little bit different. But the main key is a really simple math that you learned in first grade.
Would you key somebody a green screen that somebody else lit?
I charge more for it. So yeah. So like if you, because it's more work. Like it literally, we had our first client that really came in and had us do a lot of green screen. They did the green screen course with us, and then they came in and said, "Hey, we've got some green screen." And I told them how much it was going to cost. It's like $25,000 for a week of shooting green screen and giving them the footage. And they said, "Well, how much? What would it cost if we just had our current team do it and you key it?" And I was like, $35,000. So because it's going to be way more work. I can't guarantee it. Because what people don't understand is that the secret is in shooting the green screen. It's not in the post of the green screen for corporate. When you watch film, you're watching all kinds of junk because they don't have the time for that, and it's too much going on. The green screen is kind of a guide, because so much of film is rotoscoping that it is the vast majority of it is all a rotoscope, and the green just kind of helps here and there,
If you're finding office hours valuable, there are a few ways you can help. You can subscribe to our channel. We also have volunteer opportunities. If you go to officehours.global/volunteer, you can find out how you can help not just during the show, but around the show. And finally, you can contribute to the show financially at officehours.global/donate. Helps us keep the show running, and we really appreciate it. So that's officehours.global/donate. We appreciate all the support. Next question.
This one is a QR code question from Andy Dowsett in San Diego. Reddit implemented Answers, which AI summarizes Reddit discussions for quick, relevant answers with links to threads. Would office hours ever consider a similar approach? It would help to have the ability to sift through the thousands of asked questions.
Alex?
Yeah, we're definitely talking about things, and whether we use Opus or other things to look at the entire, all of our back or the last month or the last year. I mean, I just don't know what, if you go back more than a year, I don't know whether those answers are as relevant because they're, it's been a year. A lot of things have happened. So we are looking at those things. We just don't have anything out yet.
Yeah, what we need to do is have the engine analyze the questions and answers to say, is this related to gear or is this answer related to physics? Right? Because there's some things that are evergreen, but it's tough to, you have to program in the weights.
Yeah.
Okay, I need a team of 3 people. Meet me after.
Exactly. Exactly.
Next question.
This one is from Todd Rains in Allen, Texas. I'm rebuilding my Windows PC with many new components, motherboard, CPU, graphics card, and new DRAM. What procedures should I be aware of when using the same storage devices like boot disk, NVMe drives, and HDDs?
Alexander?
Well, for one, make sure they're properly formatted. The other thing is, and I don't know if you still need to do this, but it used to be that when you would activate a Windows license, if you're going to change components on the motherboard, you would have to deregister or remove that PC before you could actually activate the new one. They may have changed that. Maybe Courtney can say something to that. But last time I checked, you had to do that before you start dismantling the computer.
Courtney?
Yeah, it depends on if this PC that you're updating is one you built originally and you have your own Windows license, OEM license for that PC, then you should be able to do it using that key that came with your OEM license to reactivate Windows once you get it booted. The thing you got to remember is Windows builds itself based on the hardware that it's running on. So when you first install Windows, it looks at, what's your motherboard, what's your CPU, what's your GPU, and it loads the drivers and the DLLs that those particular BIOSes use and various graphics cards use and CPUs use. So your old boot drive will probably not boot. Once you change out the motherboard, the CPU, and the graphics card, it might boot into a recovery mode, where you have to basically rebuild it. So I would do just a complete wipe, just either keep your old hard drive and NVMe drives with all your files on it, put a new one in there, and just put a brand new version of Windows on there with the latest version of Windows 11. Install it from a download of online. So make sure you get 24H2 or whatever the latest version of Windows is. And then you're going to have to activate it. And if it was digitally activated before, in other words, if you bought this PC from HP or Compaq, these days they come with a digitally activated license, which is a internal license key that is hidden and stored inside the BIOS. So if you change out the motherboard, that license key is going to go away and no longer be registered with the Microsoft in the sky. So you're going to have to call and explain to Windows, to the Microsoft beings, to reactivate your computer, that you've changed your motherboard, your CPU, etc., and that you had a previously digitally licensed board. They may tell you they will not license it for the new motherboard, or they may, give you a little bit of grace and go ahead and give you a code that will let you activate the new version of Windows on the new PC, as long as you convince them that you're just updating an old PC which came with a license on it.
And Mickey in the chat also mentions if you're upgrading your graphics card to run a DDU or a display driver uninstaller on the machine, that way all of the registry files and support files and drivers are taken off that machine before you plug it into the new stuff, so it knows, hey, I got to look for something new, as opposed to, hey, I was an AMD, now I'm looking for an NVIDIA. Wait, nothing works. Next question.
This one's from Robert Green in Los Angeles. GROK 4 was announced in a rather non-polished live stream and is now available. Thoughts?
Go ahead, Courtney.
Well, I tried GROK early on, and I found it to be incredibly fast, and it still is fast in GROK 4. I think it has pretty good speeds, but it was wildly inaccurate originally. But they've made great improvements to it. It's getting a lot better as far as accuracy goes, and they've gone to kind of a recursive training mode, agentic type training mode with 4 or 5. So I will reserve my opinion for later.
Alex?
I'm not going to speak to GROK, but we can look at the actual stream itself. so if we look here, this is pretty underlit. You can tell by the hair light that someone actually did this on purpose. Like, it's not like they just kind of pulled it in. There's a grid up there somewhere, and they've got hair lights. But and a lot of us have done the Charlie Rose thing. The Charlie Rose look is pretty hard. I think that the idea that they had is that they would be in a, that when you go down the Charlie Rose route, you have this idea that you're going to be able to make everything just go into infinity black. And it turns out, so what happens often on and those of you who are too young, Charlie Rose did a lot of interviews, and it was kind of an infinite black. He was on a table with another person. There was an infinite black behind it, and there was definitely a time before Charlie Rose had his issues that everyone wanted to look like Charlie Rose. And so this is what we would when I see something like this, I go, oh, someone said I just want to do a Charlie Rose, and this is what this happens. Now, to do that well, number one is you need a lot of space between you and the background. And number two is you need a lot of lights that are very focused, that are up high, that are going to come down on folks. And so it's going to light them. It's going to be a little toppy compared to everything else. The more they go out, you have to really flag them off so that they can't hit that background at all. The background has to be very black and not get any light. And then usually you tweak the blacks a little bit, and you can see this in this video, is that what they did is crush all the blacks. And that's how you crush the background out of it. You see like the curtains, and they crush the blacks. And you do that because you didn't get the lighting right. And so now what ends up happening is you're losing all of your it's kind of, there's no definition there anymore. And so what it definitely looks like is they were trying to go down that path. They weren't going to get there. And the way that the big handle that you grab onto when you can still see the background in a Charlie Rose set is you crush the blacks. And this looks crushed all over the place. So I think that's probably where they were trying to go. I get the idea, but it's actually a really hard thing, and it's not something you want to do the first time. Like the first time I did it, the first 10 times I did it, wasn't very good. so it was the best we could. Some of the old twits were like this, and we found different spaces and bigger spaces to try to figure this out. And fortunately for me, Leo was willing to play along while I figured out how to actually make this work.
Alexander?
So I haven't used the latest version, but I do. So I pay for X, and I do use GROK. And I have to say, one of the things that I like about it is that it has really no limitations when it comes to image generation, when it comes to copyright. So one of the things that I tried to get ChatGPT to do a few weeks back was I wanted to, for those that have watched the Highlander TV series in the 90s, I asked ChatGPT to turn Adrian Paul into a Jedi Master, and it said it couldn't do that because you can't use actors' likenesses. GROK just said, sure, why not? We'll let you do whatever we want. So I managed to actually get this out of it. And it's funny because that actually looks like what Adrian Paul looks like now in 2025. So it's pretty cool.
Next question.
This is a QR code question coming from Dan Browning in Bitterfoot Valley, Montana. I just purchased 2 Netgear M4250 AV Line 8-port Gigabit PoE Ethernet switches with PoE switches for a 4-camera NDI system I am building for longer runs than 100 meters and also for redundancy. How important is the router in front of the switches?
Ronnie?
Well, this is kind of a difficult question to answer correctly or 100% correctly. So those switches are able to do most of the heavy lifting, and it also includes VLAN routing between them. So in the simplest form, you don't need a router at all. If you're using fixed IP addresses on all the items or all the equipment you are connecting, you could probably just do with these switches and interconnect them between each others. if you're using other switches as well, and you need to use VLANs and you need to have VLAN routing also on those switches, you would probably need to add a router, which is also able to, so a managed switch, which is also able to do the VLAN routing inside the router. And then you have to, of course, configure all the switches to either be one of the switches could be core switcher, and the other one can just add functionality for the other switches that you have. But the question is asked if you can do without it, and you can.
Let's sneak in one more.
This one's from Paul Vahus in Austin, Texas. What movie or TV show or content have you been watching that you would recommend to our audience?
Courtney?
Well, I did a guilty pleasure, and I went back. There are no new seasons out yet, but the TV series Fargo, if you have access to that, I think it's on Hulu for the back seasons. Season 1 through season 4, I believe. Really tasty Coen Brothers stories. And each season is different, so you don't have to worry about getting them out of order or watching them in order or binge watching them in order, because they're whole new casts and whole new stories each season. So go back and watch a season of Fargo. I think you'll enjoy it.
Alex?
Yeah, the person that I really enjoyed watching recently is Rory Sutherland, and I don't know how to find him other than I think he's got a web page somewhere, but he was an advertising executive, and he's really good at breaking down marketing things of like, these are the things you probably didn't think about, or these are the it's kind of inverted. Like he talked about Red Bull and the fact that they actually, when they did the testing for Red Bull, they were thinking of rolling it out. People were like, this is the worst thing I've ever drank. Like you couldn't pay me to drink this. And then they talked about the marketing principles of this, that by making it small and letting it not taste very good, it's really about like, this must be very powerful, kind of thing, and how you sell that marketing to it. And so I find I find him very thought provoking, and so that'd be something I'd recommend.
Whether you're a golfer or not, the Apple TV Plus show Stick with Owen Wilson is great. It is a very funny show. It's not just a straight comedy like The Studio. It's got a little bit of high stakes in it, and even if you're not into golf or you've never understood what makes golf compelling to watch the character arcs in this and where it goes is just it's a great time. So check out Stick. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you to our producers, first of all, for asking such great questions, keeping us on our toes. Like I say, expanding our perspectives every single day. Cannot do the show without you. We did have to send a couple of questions back, so if you're in Makana, it'll be in your notes. If you submit it via the QR code, we'll get it in starting again on Monday. To the panel for being here. It's always a privilege to spend an hour getting smarter, thanks to the life experience you're bringing to the table. Everybody's in here doing such an amazing service. Thank you so much. And finally, thank you to our back-end crew. There's a whole little village of people that lights up just to make this show possible, not only during the show, but also all around the show, keeping us organized. You're the foundation of what we do, and it's really appreciated. Tlaloc Traversal today, if we would have went around in person, is 19,000 miles. That's 30,000 kilometers, 147 million bananas for scale. See you in After Hours.
Courtney, did you see the trailer for Dexter Resurrection?
I think so, yeah. It's Dexter goes to New York City. Hey,
but the thing is, I thought it was definitive that they killed that character off in New Blood.
They did. They will have to explain that. He was in the ambulance going away, and a miracle happened.
I'm not going to lie. I want to watch it. But
it was a miracle of like, hey, we're making so much money with this. Let's figure this out.
How can we kill this character off? We just killed the cash cow. Oh my!
Yeah, if we don't kill the cash cow.
I think he might end up being like Hugh Jackman. He's gonna continue to play that character the rest of his life.
Yeah, well, see, they played out the new beginnings, or what the Dexter, the early years. They did that. So now
are they still doing it, or did they cancel?
That caught up to the first season. The early years caught up to the first season. So you can't go anywhere. That's a dead end. So they had to direct him to make a few. To continue.
I just hope it's good. I hope it's good.
I do too. They shot it all in New York. We'll see.
Nice. Yeah.
All right.